My name is Carlos Walker, and this is Art and Hustle, Black Authors Matter. And today I'm here with none other than the Dr. Christian Gregory. Peace and blessings, sir. How you doing?
Peace, and blessings, beloved Carlos. I appreciate you, taking the time to bring me onto your platform, but more important, the fact you even carved out and created this platform. So far too often, creators don't get their flowers and don't have a platform to tell our individual stories. And so it's always good. It's been a busy week of press for me this week, but it's always good to come home, literally and figuratively, since both of us call DC, Washington, DC home. So come back to Chocolate City. So thank you for having me, brother.
Man, it is more than an honor. If you will, share about a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So, highly honored to be one of the Gregory 10. So there's 10 of us Gregory children. Since you asked me specifically in the pecking order, I'm number 8. When you get big family, sometimes you got to go by numbers. So I'm number 8 in the lineup. Affectionately 8, 9, and 10, which is I'm number 8. My sister Ayana's number 9. My brother Johante's number 10. Oddly enough, all of us live in the DC area. We were affectionately known as the 3 little guys. So the 3 little guys, I joke my older siblings all the time, the 3 little guys are doing most of the heavy lifting. So, but sometimes that's how, I have 7 sisters, which means I had 8 mothers. So, we got so much. So since so much was given, it's required that we give so much back. And that's the full circleness of it all. So I'm a retired chiropractor, ran Washington Spine and Disc for 25 years here in Washington, D.C., just a premier pain, well-being, wellness center. So it was a multidisciplinary practice. So it was myself, there were other chiropractors, massage therapists, neurologists. We dealt with a lot of natural remedies. And so for 25 years, I was honored to serve. I call myself the chiropractor to the movement. So, when you and I first chatted, you were in a different studio, and behind you there was a photo of Cicely Tyson. There was a photo of Rosa Parks, and so there was a red wall with a bunch of photographs on it behind you. And that may have been studio, I'm not sure. But Cicely Tyson was my second patient out of chiropractic school. My first patient was Stevie Wonder. So my pop saw to it that, I was one day out of school, and Dick Gregory, there's no better hype man than Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory was like, my son's best chiropractor in the world. I was like, Pop, I'm one day out of school. He said, I got a special few patients for you to see. We jumped on Amtrak, shot from DC to New York, went into Stevie's hotel room. He was already set up, waiting to be adjusted. So my first official adjustment out of chiropractic school was none other than the legendary Stevie Wonder, the musical genius himself. So that was a lot of pressure on a young brother coming out of chiropractic school, to adjust Stevie's neck, because had things gone wrong, there would have been a whole global outrage towards this new chiropractor. And then we went right from there. We went right over and we went to Miss Cicely Tyson's home, and she became my second patient. So everyone, it's been 30 years now, because I've retired, but 30 years that I've still have advocated for longevity, well-being, for us taking responsibility for our health and wellness, and pushing it's not enough just to live a full life. We want you to be healthy for a full life. So pushing health span deeper into lifespan. And so the longevity industry now is slated to be a $10 trillion industry. Well, as a Gregory, I grew up on a farm, thanks to my parents' wisdom. The farm was rooted in longevity. So now all these things, back then, being a vegetarian or vegan, you were just referred to as a health nut. No one jogged back then. No, I talk about this in 7 Million Steps. My dad would be out there jogging, and all 10 of us, like little ducklings, would be behind him jogging. This was in the 70s, and you didn't really have people jogging like that in the 70s. So it was later in the 70s that people ran naturally. There were always runners, but as far as, hey, I'm going to go for a quote unquote jog, you didn't see running trails and joggers on the side of the road. So my dad was definitely a catalyst for change. a lifelong service provider. And he was someone, some people talk a good game, but he always was one to walk that walk and say, you know, I listen to me, you can just watch me. And now, you know, my dad was 84 years old when he passed away. Chronologically, he was 84, but biologically, he was a good 110. There was a lot of miles on that mind, body, and soul. You know, Brother Dick had been serving his people for a long time, and he was tired, and he would be the first to tell you he was tired. A lot of the fasting. So he would fast for medicinal purposes. And as a family, we were raised on that. But he would also, in the 60s and 70s, he would go on long hunger strikes as a form of protest. And there's nothing healthy about hunger strikes. It's quite honest, quite the opposite. You're going on a hunger strike to say, look, I'm risking my life, putting my life in danger to shed light on this topic, and or to shed light on and bring attention to this movement, or to bring attention to something that's a disservice. So he knew when he was doing it that he was putting his life at risk. He just didn't know kind of how belated the impact of some of those, not medicinal fasting, but hunger strikes were on his body. It really had done a number on his cardiovascular system, and a lot of there was a tremendous amount of damage to not his veins but his arteries. So my dad had 27 cerebral strokes, and those are strokes that are deep towards the brainstem. They're not strokes that are more towards the surface, the outer area of the brain. Those are the strokes that you typically see where people will get paralysis and can't move a side of their face or their arm. Their speech pattern will be disturbed. With inner cerebral strokes, it typically manifests itself as restlessness, agitation, and anger. So a lot of people that didn't know a younger Dick Gregory, they just know the older gray beard Dick Gregory that's all over the internet, and that fire in his belly and that anger. I'll read comments and be like, oh, has such a chip on his shoulder, so angry. Well, that was, my dad was the exact opposite of angry. One of the most, as he would always say, loving and lovable. One of the most gentle. You know, part of the reason he became a vegan is because he agreed during the nonviolent civil rights movement, well, if I'm not going to hurt someone that hates me, I'm not going to hurt an animal that's never done nothing to me. So, but it just, Dick Gregory's story, and I talk about my dad in the third person a lot because we were, it's not just a father and son relationship. We were business partners. And, you know, you don't want to be in a business meeting signing a multi-million-dollar deal talking about, well, daddy or dad or father, like it's, you know, we're business partners. And so, and the other reason, I don't want it to make it seem to my colleagues like I'm pulling rank and saying, well, this is my dad. No, we're all in here as partners, and, you know, all voices deserve to be heard. So the beauty of Dick Gregory is he was a spiritual trillionaire. Money would flow through him. It would always through him and right out to his people. And so we're trying to, you know, Carlos, not trying, we're keeping that alive. And 7 million steps is just one more project that gives us the opportunity to just showcase and highlight the endless amount of service for humanity. But he'd be the first to point out, yes, I'm doing this for humanity, but, you know, I'm first and foremost, I'm doing this for Black folks, because it's rooted in his love for his people, because that's what he saw so up close and personal. That was so near and dear to him. So, you know, Pops would always say the civil rights movement may have started, you know, about Black folks, but it was quickly co-opted. And there's more when you talk about, when folks are talking about, well, DEI hired this or woke this or cancel culture. You know, white women and folks with disabilities have benefited more from the Civil Rights Act than Black folks. There's no question about that. And you know, it is, and you know, and that's fine. It was, you know, the civil rights movement was not all encompassing. That was one stop. When people say to me, so I want to hold signs. Well, okay, well, now we have this digital technology. What took, you know, Dr. King and Dick Gregory 50 busloads of people, we can get the equivalent of 1 million busloads just sitting here chopping it up like we're doing right now. So that's the evolutionary process. We're supposed to evolve to the next level of activism. And if that next level of activism doesn't include economics, we're missing the boat. Like, and so it's taking control of our own financial destiny. And I'm not talking about, encapsulating in, as a Black chiropractor, I never went out and said, hey, I'm a Black chiropractor, or hey, I'm Dick Gregory's son, this chiropractor. No, I'm an amazing chiropractor. You should come
Mm-hmm.
see me. I just so happen to be Black, very proud of that. Just
And
so
the Gregory son.
I'm very proud of that. But I never hung up a shingle or ad that said, Black Dick Gregory son chiropractor, come and see me. So the beauty of all of this is that we're continuing to lead by example. We're continuing to take all of the seeds that my father has left us. And the newest seed for me, at least, is 7 million steps. And 7 million steps tells the incredible story of 1976, when my dad was really, he was alarmed about hunger and food insecurity in America. And we all know what hunger is. Hunger is a medical diagnosis. Once someone is suffering from hunger and malnutrition, so hunger is more physical. Food insecurity is more psychological. It's, I know what I'm eating today, but I don't know how I'm going to feed my family tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it a little hard to enjoy today's meal when you don't know where the meals for the rest of the week are going to come from. Here in the Washington, D.C. area, as you know, we're still dealing with the lingering weather event of a storm from a week and a half ago. A lot of the schools in the area were closed for a period of time. And I think selfishly, when I was a kid, I loved when school was out, because I'd stay home, I'd play, but because we had plenty of food at home. We had plenty. There's a lot of children. A lot of times when I first moved to DC, I didn't realize why DC public schools so rarely closed. And it was explained to me by a principal that was a patient of mine, DCPS principal, that there's a lot of children within the DC public schools who their only guaranteed hot meal is the school breakfast program and the school lunch program. And it really, you got to take a step back and just, in a nation as wealthy as America, the fact that that could be a reality anywhere in America is unsettling. So in 1976, my dad decided to physically jog 7 million steps from Los Angeles, California to New York City. America was celebrating its 200th birthday. So it's bicentennial. Now, 50 years later, as America prepares to celebrate America
50 years.
We're still dealing with food insecurity and hunger. So many of my dad's stories, I wish I was telling them through a historical lens, like, hey, that's what happened back then. But sadly, a lot of them, we're still telling that story right now. And all you have to do is follow the headlines. SNAP benefits have become a hotly debated topic. They're trying to restrict access to it, and it's become weaponized and politicized. And you should never weaponize food, never weaponize water. And I know what happens in other places around the world. I work with a lot of nonprofits in the food and water space, and I know a lot of places internationally we see people weaponize the food and water that we're trying to provide. But for us Gregory's, we're no strangers to food and water. During the Ethiopian famine in the 80s, my dad, just imagine, this is a whole nother book right here, Brother Carlos. My dad and Michael Jackson had brought thousands of pounds of my dad's Bahamian diet, because Bahamian diet really wasn't a weight loss formula. Back then, they called it the 4X formula. It really wasn't a weight loss formula. It was a nutrient density formula, almost like what an Ensure drink is, elders drink, but it's a healthy, clean version of it. So you could go in America on the news every night, because the news programs everyone like little robots. So every night, news, it was showing these awful images of young children, skin and bones, big bloated bellies. And so I remember it, and I do a lot of business with a lot of food corporations. So sometimes these things get me into trouble, but it's the history. This is what these folks have done. So Kraft Foods was, whether you bought their macaroni and cheese, whatever, you could tear, because this is long before the internet, you could tear off little coupons on there and mail it back in with money. And the money that you were sending in, because it wasn't no Apple Pay or Zelle or none of that back then, that money, and they pledged a certain amount of their proceeds, they would send in food to Ethiopia. So when my dad and Michael Jackson arrived, they were where they had shipped via boat. They had shipped all of the Forex formula over. They got there about a week before it arrived because they had to work with figure out what their distribution plan was going to be. And there were large barges. And my dad remembered this as he described this story so vividly. It was almost like I was there. There were mountains of food. And when he walked up on it, he realized they were all Kraft mini marshmallows. So the mini marshmallows that Kraft would put in their cereal, they had a surplus of those. They said this is technically food.
And
So
that's what they were shipping over
use
there.
your money. That's what they to send barges full of mint. Now, if you give a healthy person a mini marshmallow, there is zero nutrition content and will most likely make you sicker than healthier.
Mm-hmm.
Who's malnourished, you give them something like it's just an instant death sentence. So it wasn't being moved because the locals were like, it just sat on the barge. It just sat on the shore, rotten under the sun. But technically, big corporation can say, well, we assisted, we sent food. So early on, you start to realize all love is not love. People can love you to life or they can love you to death. All help is not help. People can help you to a good space or they can help you to a worse space. So it's important that, we're willing to, do the work. And so once, so here on this shore, Ethiopia, you have Dick Gregory, you have Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson at this point was one of the biggest celebrities in the world. And they're coming in and they couldn't get all of the local truck contractors for distribution were already jammed up, locked into contracts of delivering nothing, but they had those contracts, so they couldn't pull away. And I don't want to say no one, there were some other folks who were bringing food. I want to be very clear, but some of the biggest corporations really violated the people and us because it was our money, it was American that they were utilizing and getting write-offs for. So my dad and Michael Jackson being resourceful, I believe it was 35 Toyota trucks they purchased. So they purchased themselves, hired drivers because they couldn't get any of the distribution. So they built their own distribution network. And there's great photos of this, Carlos, to get this Dick Gregory's Forex formula, which was basically almost like a powdered milk. It was a powdered, nutrient-dense formula, vegan. And not that I'm saying it had to be vegan, but that it did just so happen to be vegan. And hundreds of thousands of lives were saved. They primarily got it to hospitals. They decided they wanted to get it to hospitals and almost like baby milk or baby formula, start getting it to children and infants instantly. So that's another documentary at some point, a story we will tell. We don't tell these stories. I certainly don't. So people can pat Gregory's on the back and say, Dick Gregory, my brother, what a good man. We're telling these stories to say that you too can go, not you could, but you have to. And it doesn't have to be something as grand as Dick Gregory and Michael Jackson, they had resources that most people can't match. So we're not expecting that. And that's the beauty of, 7 million steps. You don't have to do all 7. You could do 10. You could do 1,000. As I'm looking at these monks that are walking across the country for peace, it's expensive. There's a full security detail. Walking on most of America doesn't have sidewalks. Us urban dwellers think, everywhere you go, there's sidewalks. Lots of it. As you get into rural America, there's no sidewalks. And sadly, one of the monks was struck by a vehicle and lost his leg. And so so I say that to say, here you got, young, skinny brother Dick out there on his own, most of the time did not have a police escort, not advising it, jogging across the country for a long portion of that run. He was joined by Muhammad Ali. So, imagine the spectacle. You're driving down the road and it's like, holy smokes, that's Muhammad Ali and Dick Gregory jogging on the roadside. And so many, as they would approach certain communities and neighborhoods, large amounts of indigenous Native Americans came out and ran with them. As they approached cities, large amounts of folks from that city would come and run with them. But there's a photo of my dad and Muhammad Ali alone, man, and it looks like they're on Mars. You don't see anything as far as the eyes can see. It's just two, serious, hardworking brothers side by side. There's no, obviously there's one photograph that took the picture, and that was John Bellamy, who worked for my dad and was a partner and was facilitating the run. But there wasn't the world's press out there. It's just them away from it all. And if you've ever done any distance running, it can get lonely. It's you start it, but loneliness can also allow
Mhm.
seeds and thoughts and wisdom to flourish. But it's a photo that captures the two of them well. And as I often say, if a photo could talk, that photo's lecturing. And so I'll share that with you so you can pop that up as part as we talk about this interview. But because it's just a brilliant story. And I was the illustration, Frank Morrison. I mean, I was blessed to have, and again, I said this often. This isn't me. This is folks. If I just said, "Hey, Christian Gregory, chiropractor, wants to do a children's book about chiropractic," I'm not getting the likes of a Frank Morrison, a Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes, X time. I can't even count how many times this cat's won New York Times best-selling author. And the reason, I can already hear, because I know my people. Well, I don't need to be validated by this white magazine. I don't need to. But what helps you to get money to do this is that validation. So it's a double-edged sword until we have our own. You want to roll a movie out. Well, most of us don't have it. We don't making a movie is relatively easy these days. Distributing it is hard. Making a product easy these days. Getting it into a distribution network. I have an energy drink brand. It's taken us 3-4 years just to build the foundation. So the last thing you want to do is tell everyone about your product and they say, "Oh, but you can only get it at this 1% of the retailers in the world." You say, no, by the time you announce it, you want people to be able to go wherever it is that they buy, provisions. You want them to be able to go there, just like Coca-Cola and Pepsi products, and you be there. So sometimes the glamour of being in business blinds us to the reality. And the reason so many folks have a successful product and then it disappears is because they don't have the infrastructure. My dad raised us in business to understand networks, and he would always talk about, you're not an individual, you're part of a system, and God here can build a system. And so what we're doing is building these systems to tell these stories. And the wonderful thing is, a book like this, it took 3 years. It took 3 years. 8 months before we released it, the book was already being reviewed by school groups, by trade. So, booksellers like this. Nowadays you can, especially with all these AI tools and you can write a book in one night and have it published the next day. But where can I get it? Well, you got to log on to my website. You got to click this. You got to put this code in. And a week or two later, maybe the book will arrive. Well, that's not the Amazon has changed our mindset of, I see it, I want it, it better be here by tomorrow. And then when we do try to do our own network and we send it out and folks don't get it in 2 days, then they're online talking bad about a brother's. Well, it took 2 weeks for this. Well, you can't have it both ways. So again, the beauty of America, and this is true. I've traveled all over the world, and I tell this all the time because sometimes Americans as people, we think we're special. I'm talking about all Americans. It's the infrastructure. That's what it's, the electricity, the power grid, the water, sewage. It is the infrastructure, to your point. I say this all the time. If a person downtown DC slips on the ice and hits their head, man, $8 million worth of equipment will show up, including a medevac helicopter. And they don't say, wait a minute, open your wallet, show us your insurance, show you have the ability to pay. It's just the infrastructure. You flip your car over, tear it up on some cement, they're coming to cut you out. They're not asking those questions. And so the infrastructure, the shoulders this nation stands on, and a lot of folks have built this country, but it would be a disservice not to acknowledge the slave labor that was a major backbone, a major foundational pillar We live in DC. Every time I drive past the Capitol building, I say, okay, slaves built that. Every time this is 2026, man. This is no history book. I drive past the US Capitol, say, well, slaves built that. I drive past the White House, say, slaves built that. Then folks want to say, oh, don't talk to me about reparations. Don't. I'm still looking at and again, I'm not anti-reparations. That's just not one of the things on my platform. But I'm all for. I know there's a lot of folks that are working on that. I probably have a little bit too much distrust in the system to spend time thinking that there's ever going to be something. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be folks out there advocating for that. But to understand the infrastructure that is America has our blood, sweat, and tears and DNA all through it, and it's a disservice to not lean into that. To not lean in. There's I don't quote living in DC. I truly understand that Democrat, Republican is Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. Nothing's a nutritional hydrating beverage. So, and that doesn't mean that there's not good or bad within both, but again, it's part of the same system.
They're two fangs of the same snake.
There it is. I mean, and again, and that's not to. I think there's a lot of people who get into politics and they have good intentions, but once they get in, they realize, they go, wait a minute,
that changed.
It's not. And again, if me and you, Carlos, if we promote heavyweight fighters, we're boxing, we promote, we're the new generation of Don Kings. Well, if our two prize fighters become best friends and don't want to fight anymore, there's no money.
It ain't no money.
Republicans become best friends and get along, the money's in the fight. And so
they got to keep the outside. They got to keep the outside in uproar.
Divided in uproar. And when we're emotional, we put our wealth into it, not just our financial wealth, but our emotional wealth. And so I don't talk religion with folks. I don't talk politics with folks because the folks are too emotional. And it's like, when I see grown men in jerseys cheering for their team, all right,
you get emotional.
And that's great. If that works for you, I'm definitely not, but I don't, I don't get drawn into that because I feel like there's too much going on out here that requires our focused attention to be distracted by entertainment. And there's nothing wrong with entertainment. We work hard, play hard. The brain needs that. But when it becomes to just fear, my dad would always say, fear and God can't occupy the same space. That doesn't mean he was anti-fear. Fear is a reflex. If I'm walking outside and I hear a lot bang, it's okay to be fearful for a moment. Don't live in fear.
He just understood faith. He understood faith.
100%. And fear is the universe telling you, hey, pay attention to that. But don't focus on it. Pay attention to it. Get yourself out of harm's way. It's just like a reflex. Well, if you stay constantly in an elevated, agitated state of reflex, well, now it's not a reflex anymore. It's emotion. So emotion is emotion. So it's peeling it back and understanding that there's a lot of things vying for our time these days. And if we're not careful, you mess around and look around and 3-4 decades have gone by and you really have not done anything to bring yourself joy because of all the false dopamine that a lot of these devices and platforms allow us to tap into will have kind of circumvented and taken over your life. So as a longevity coach, now I'm just telling, hey, live in the moment. Unplug. You use these tools. I'm not anti-technology. Technology is amazing. I'm not anti-technology, but there's all the technology in the world's not more amazing than this. Take your time to understand the gift of what and if we understood it better, we would take care of it better. So it's easy for me to go off on a tangent, but I want to come back to the folks and just talk about the absolute honor of working with Derek Barnes and Frank Morrison. If I never do another children book, I peaked on this one because it was a dream team. It was a dream team. And that dream team was top down, inside out. That was Pops pulling strings. He's still executive producing things, remotely from afar. So no, Carlos, it's just an honor. It's a pleasure. I'm elated to work on these projects and, to keep them out there for the people All 10 of us Gregory's have never tried to fill my dad's shoes. We've made the commitment that we're going to keep the shoes polished, keep them clean, and keep them out there for the world to see and be inspired by, not us trying to run around in some shoes that are entirely too big for us. So the shoes are too big for filling. And it's important. I say this all the time. I'm a keeper of the flame. I'm
Mm.
not the flame. It's and when keepers of the flame want to become the flame, then they get absorbed and the flame ultimately flames out because there's no flame keepers there. I'm a keeper of this flame, and I'm honored to serve, and I'm honored to do so.
So there's a few things I want to pinpoint that you brought up. You spoke about him and fasting. I want to say I heard you said on your Instagram. What made him start fasting, or what made him uh commit to fasting? I think I heard you say something to the nature of when he was younger, he was hungry. And from there, what he did was locked into it. He didn't run away from it. He made it his best friend. And
Correct.
he started fasting, not for hunger's sake, but to make this a long time journey. Speak to that.
Great point. So I want to peel that all the way back because it's important. There's no young child that's going to bed hungry that has the wisdom to say, oh, this is a medicinal fast. I'm fasting. So Dick Gregory, as a child, he befriended hunger because he knew it so well. Like he went to bed hungry so often that he said, it's either either hunger's going to win or I'm going to win, and I can't outlast hunger, so I might as well become its friend. It's like there's a mean junkyard dog at the end of the block. Well, you can either keep getting bit or you can bring it some treats and befriend it. And he decided to befriend hunger. So when it came, he wasn't startled. He was like, hey, old friend. And psychologically, the comfort that provided him to know not if it's coming, to know it's coming. And so that was part of just my dad was born in 1932. That was when America was at its absolute poorest point. That was the Great Depression, the poorest year of the Great Depression. He was born right into that. So, there wasn't no middle class. Like upper class folks were struggling. So middle class was wiped out. So the folks who normally would have helped out the folks that were struggling, that whole system got shut down. So these folks were, there was a state ran welfare system, but it was bare bones. I mean, there just wasn't the money there. So if there's some people that go hungry because there's elders and caregivers around them that misappropriate financial resources and didn't make nutrients a resource, that a priority. That wasn't what it was. It simply wasn't there. And in my dad's autobiography, he talks about it regularly. And that's where he became so loving and lovable, that the times that his mother, my grandmother Lucille, would come in and talk to him and just gently lay her hand on his stomach because she knew they were hungry, and the presence and the spiritual energy of her hand, my dad tells us in great detail, was fulfilling for him. He would feel full. He would feel satisfied. The hunger pains would go away, and it just shows that there's a psychological component to when you become at peace with something. And I do not for one moment think my grandmother was at peace for it, because you can become at peace for something for yourself, not for your young children. And so my dad had such a strained relationship with food as a result of that. There's stories that when in the early 60s, Dick Gregory became the highest paid grossing entertainer in the world, black or white. Like he was the premier, he was the A and A-list celebrity. And I wasn't born then, but so I read stories and talk to friends who said even back then, your dad would walk into restaurants and pick up the tab for everyone in there eating, but he'd watch everyone eat, but he wouldn't eat. He always had as a result of his childhood, he had an augmented or altered relationship with food. So when he was running for mayor of Chicago, he was running for mayor of Chicago, and a sister by the name of Dr. Fulton, who owned Fulltopia. It was a health food store that also did some healthy kind of vegan foods, hot foods. And so she sent some salads to my dad to his campaign office. And he saw it and threw it away because he said, who's sending me food? The government at that point was already trying to kill him. So he said, I'm not trusting any food. So he saw the salads and he yelled at everyone trying to eat it. He threw them away. Word got back to Dr. Fulton. She said, oh, I'm going to make salad, and then I'm going to bring them and present them and say, Dick, this, and she, just strong Black woman, like, I've made these salads for you with love. I'm supporting your campaign. And they became dear friends. She taught my dad about health, nutrition, fasting. So when he first went on his first fast, she was guiding him through it and that was for medicinal reasons. And, Carlos, he liked it. Not too many people. I've done 7-day water fast. I can do it. I love the feeling of it. I love what it does for my body, love the clarity, but I've never finished a 7-day fast and said, ooh, I can't wait for the next one. It's something I would do annually, but he loved it. Like and part of it was rooted in how well he knew hunger. And so from his childhood. So when the Vietnam War started and he decided he wanted to protest against it, that's when he first started going on his first long hunger strike. And so so he talks about that in all of his autobiographies. We talk about that in the Essential Dick Gregory, which is a book we released. A lot of times people say, oh, that's Christian Gregory's book. No. We use my dad's audio recordings and transcribe that. All I did was edit it. It's, again, keeper of the flame, keep the shoes clean, not trying to wear the shoes. And so everything that's in that book, we have my dad on audio saying that in his own words. So basically, we just transcribed it. And the only thing we did just to clean it up, to edit it, to get it into a book format. So the relationship with food, and then even as he got older, someone would piss him off, anything that would get him mad, someone, they'd lose his bag and this is a good Delta story. So Delta Airlines would lose his bag. He'd come on mad, but I'm going on a hunger strike against Delta. It just, and it was talk. It wouldn't always manifest, but the Delta, and I don't want to get anyone fired here over at Delta. After my dad passed away, a senior manager at Delta, I'll say BWI Airport to protect the innocent, approached me and said, look, he said, man, your father, the amount of love that we over at Delta had for your dad, he was like, my dad was notoriously late for flights. He missed more flights than most people make in their lifetime. And because he traveled with so much, he said and this was a manager. He told me, and I get emotional saying it now. He said, we had a special code whenever we saw your father's name on the flight roster, we knew he was going to be running late. So we would start doing things to slow down the boarding process, and I said, like, what do you mean? He said, look, it's a policy for most airlines. If there's only one boarding agent working and they have to go to the bathroom, they shut the door, shut down the process, and they go, and this is pre 9/11, they go to the bathroom. He said, we would do that routinely. So although there was supposed to be 3 of us there, if we saw your dad on the flight roster, we would leave and keep one there. And that one would keep leaving to go to the bathroom to drag time until we got word from the front desk. Gregory just checked in. And he never knew this, man. He never, that type of love, and my dad would always say, when they love you, they love you. And Amtrak's the same way. My dad spent more time in train stations and airports than he did anywhere else. I took my dad and Miss Cicely Tyson and dropped them off at Amtrak. They're going from DC to New York. Man, people would say, oh, Dick Gregory and Cicely, at this age, they travel alone. I said, if you think they're traveling alone, the moment they would get on that train, the love from the conductors to the entire Amtrak staff. And one time I rode with both of them, and I didn't know that this brother came up and handed me a key. And I was like, what's this? He said, oh, no, when your dad and Miss Tyson are on here, we always lock one of the bathrooms and give them the key so they have their own bathroom for the entire trip. And so that'll ruffle a couple of people's feathers. Like, oh, you're taking the bathroom away from the people. But I knew it was rooted in love. I knew the fact, because it wasn't something that, Dick Gregory or Miss Cicely Tyson weren't saying, oh, we need our own bathroom. It was just people, as my dad was saying, they love you, they love you. And for me, so many of those things were so heartwarming to see with my own eyes, and to say, it takes a village. And when you put into the village the love the village
take care of you.
It's multitudes that you can't even quite quantify, Carlos. So that's the relationship, the complicated relationship of Dick Gregory and food and fasting and hunger strikes.
Next question, this will be the last one. His love for books, for knowledge, for education. He wrote, you said 17 books.
That's 17 books that way, but he wrote forwards for more books than that. He partnered in more books than that. So his love for books, my dad always said, so at our farm in Plymouth, Massachusetts, massive farm, one of the biggest libraries I've ever seen was my dad turned our big den there into a library. It was, I used to call it our own little mini, Timbuktu. And he would always say, if you want to hide something from an ignorant person, put it in a book. And so I don't want you to think that's what we're doing here with this book, because we're not hiding it, because we're telling you it's in there. But my dad he was fascinated by knowledge. So, again, this was pre-internet. So, every year we got, as a family, a new set of encyclopedias, because basically if they were 2 years old, it wasn't current. It's not. At what point does news just become a story? So it's news if it's new to you. Well, I can tell you something 5 years ago and it's new to you. It's a story after. So it's all relative. Have you heard this before? So he always wanted to be, and there was me and my dad and I didn't compete on too many things, but the one thing we definitely competed on was who was going to break a news story first. So whenever there was breaking news, we'd run to, hey, Pop, did you hear what? Well, O.J. Simpson this, or did it? Like, it was a passion thing between us, just to be able to break news to each other. And my wife, Melissa, was then an executive news producer with CNN. So I had an upper leg, because she'd call me and tell me things before it even broke. So
you could get to it.
So at that point, just so I could get some points, man. So at that point, whenever there was breaking news or something about to break, he'd always call me, like, what have you heard? And so he always wanted, and he read so many newspapers, not because he trusted them to be gospel. He said he didn't. He was reading them to find cracks in the fiber. And if you read the same story in 10 different newspapers, each of them will have different cracks in it. And then you can kind of ascertain and put together your own reality of your own takeaway. Each of those stories, that's your opinion. You're right. That writer's writing their opinion through their lens. All of us have particular biases. So he would read all of them and get an aggregate of all of them and be able to extract what, and that's why he could go on these programs and talk so clearly. But no, that's not what happened. The New York Times said that, but the Washington Post said, dun, 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 dun. So he was, reading in books for him was profoundly important. And also, what he used to call dumping his brain out, emptying out his head, and meaning, what good is all that information if you don't get it out? And the books were part of how we'd get it out. And my dad wasn't a writer in the traditional sense, sit down at a typewriter. He would get a group of folks in a room and, as he would say, empty out his head, and then it would come together into a book. And then he would go through and edit it down, say, no, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant, and get it right. So it's important that now with all this, the human brain has 6 lobes. I tell folks, this is the 7th lobe. Again, use it. Every night you go to bed, say the things that are on your mind. Speak into it. Don't just look at it for, laughs and giggles and memes. Use it as a tool, because, our brains are a CPU. We got so much stuff in there these days. If you don't store some of that and make sure that in your will, you have your physical, tangible things covered, but make sure that your intellectual property is covered in there as well. Because most of us in our devices, there's 1,000 books, 1,000 movies that can be extracted from what's in there. And a lot of times we die and we don't even leave the passcode to this. You never know. You and I on this conversation, we may have just figured out the cure for cancer. If this conversation
And you
dies,
can't, and if you can't open it up and somebody can't get the information, it dies with
it
you.
dies with it. And if you came up with it, Brother Carlos, we
You
just
don't get the
don't want
credit.
anyone to open it up. We want, whoever your heirs are to open it up and then to get credit for it, because credit is economic security and multi-generational. What about multi-generational, economic security? Like that's what America is. You're not supposed to start at the starting line. You're supposed to, it's passing the baton.
Baton, come on now.
And look, too many times that baton has not come to us because it didn't exist in the generation before. So I know we're wrapping up here, so I'll simply say we've got a big job. We've got an important job, and that job is on all of us to come together and work collectively. That doesn't mean we got to hold hands together, but to understand, just like we did here, this is teamwork. Like if I didn't have a dynamic brother like Derek Barnes, writing such a beautiful lyrical script, this is like, it's like an album. Well, someone's gotta lay out the music. Someone's got to put together the lyrics. Someone's got to put together the beat. And so on one of the early interviews we did, I said, no, we're not NWA, we're CWA, Creators with Attitude. And I said, my man Frank Morrison, he's Dr. Dre because he's killing it with the beats, because you look at his artwork and it's palpable. You can feel the beat coming off of it. Derek Barnes, he's writing the lyrics. He's writing, all the rhymes, I guess, well, since we're writing it ourselves, it's not a ghostwriter. So so he's keeping it hip hop. And I'm just, I'm producing, I'm putting together the music, and I'm telling this story and bringing on just phenomenal talent as this book project here is more an exercise in teamwork and understanding that no one individual can do it in an exceptional way alone. I could have got it done. It wouldn't have been this. And so 7 million steps, go out and, please, I don't ask people to support it because this money's coming back to us. I ask you to support it because when it does well, it gives us the opportunity to do a part 2, part 3, part 4. Quickly, I'll say this. You remember there was a time that a movie star or musician would never be at an award show and talk about their next project. And the first time some Black artists started doing it, people were like, oh, that's so déclassé. That's so disrespectful. Now they all do it, because if you're not your own hype person, there won't be a part 2. There won't be a part 2. So when you see me and Derek and Frank out here, as my dad would say, ripping and running, we're not promoting this for our bank account.
You promoting part 2, part 3,
and to infinity. So so for the folks who have been supporting us, for you, Brother Carlos Walker, I just say thank you from the top and bottom of my heart. You all are part of that 7 million steps. So we got work to do. So anytime I can ever be of service, like my dad, I try to be uber accessible. So always a man of the people. So thank you for the love. I see you all the time giving folks the love. Thank you. And it's not enough just to give it. You're also lovable. So loving and lovable, that's profoundly important. Love and appreciate you, brother. Keep up the good work. And thank you for this opportunity.
Last thing I'm going to ask you, well, give me a word of wisdom for anybody who, whether they're starting their journey, whether they're on their journey, a word of wisdom. And last, let the people know where they can purchase the books, and y'all go get the book.
Yeah, go get the book. I'll do it in reverse order. So the book is available everywhere where books are sold: Walmart, Target. The list of where you can't get the book is shorter than the list of where you can get the book, and that's the beauty of, again, using their infrastructure to get it out. It's flawless. So but you mentioned social media. We have the links everywhere where you can get it, where they're doing book signings all over the country. But what the brilliant takeaway here, and I'm going to tie your second question into this, what Brother Derek Barnes asked, the ending question is basically, an answer to the question, what would you do? You know, what would you do? What would you do if you knew someone that went to bed hungry every night? What would you do if you knew someone that was dealing with food insecurity? What would you do if one of your best partners and friends, are you going to make it obvious you're helping them? Or are you going to say, hey, I got this, you get next time? Man, take the shame out of it for them and allow them to realize, again, loving, oh, it's loving, I'm helping you. But are you doing it in a lovable way that they can love you back for that help, or are you shaming them while you're giving that help? So and then when it comes to, if someone that for my lifetime has owned a multitude of businesses, I've always had incredible partners. I've never been a go at it alone. The hardest and most challenging thing always is fundraising, because most of the institutional investors don't necessarily fully understand. They understand the black dollar. They don't necessarily want to understand black business, but they understand the black dollar. They want the black dollar.
They're a consumer.
Yes, they want that consume, because we will consume. So but finding institutional investors that so many folks that believe in your dream, support that dream. Man, there's two brothers that have partnered with me financially on a multitude of things. And we talk and we laugh, man. There's sometimes you pull up and hey, there's a $500,000 invoice due. And, most people would break down from the stress, and you just look up and the universe got you. That, look, if it was easy, anyone would do it. So being an entrepreneur is certainly not easy. You got to have a network. First, you got to have a strong product, because no one wants product in something. And so I'm a firm believer of paying it forward and then going out. I'm probably close enough now to being on the other side of these business ventures to be able to go in, almost like a Shark Tank, come in, respectfully, not come and pitch me so I can just say no. So I can say, hey, for my understanding, this product would benefit from doing this, and this. And if you're willing to agree to do that, I would be interested in coming in and, being a partner. I'm not giving you anything. I'm taking some equity. It's important to have like-minded partners, and partners that let me correct that. Like-minded in philosophy, not like-minded in skill set. You want a broad skill set around you, that people that understand the complexities of business, so you can balance each other out. We don't need a group. That's why I love how diverse the Gregory family is. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. We're not all just good at the same thing, because at that point, you don't have the protection of diversity. And diversity is in the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. You don't have diversity, things start going sideways quickly. So that's what I would tell folks. I'd say follow your dreams, definitely. Follow your passion, support others. I see so many folks online talking about, I see folks lurking, but they're never liking. They're never, okay, great. I love the difference between racism up south, down south and up north. So you had covert racism up north. They didn't tell you they hated you. You had overt racism down south. They put a poster up to them. Let me know how you feel. If I'm
Let me know how you feel.
If I know how you feel, then I know. But if I don't know how you feel, but
you standing on my back,
then I'm thinking it's me. When meantime, it doesn't have nothing to do with me. It's you. So it's important to know that you have folks that understand, know how you feel, and build a team that is willing to go out there and do the work. Don't look for other folks to support you, man. I hate to say this. Most of your support's going to come from strangers, man. And I don't say that to cast judgment or shame on anyone, friend, family, anyone. Inner circle, outer circle. Most of your, if I went and looked at books sold right now, I guarantee you most of the books being purchased are from people who don't know me. And that's okay. That's okay.
You take it for what it is. You look,
what it is, but
keep moving.
My life that way. You got something out here, even if I don't drink it or don't eat it, I'm going to buy it to support you. People look at my page, they see me plugging other products all the time that I don't have anything to do with, just because I'm supporting what you do, because I know how hard it is to get something up off the ground. And so when you find good investors, stick with them. When you find good investors, stick with them, because nothing makes an investor happy when they get a proper return on their investment. And
Come
it's
on,
not
man.
just wealth. Sometimes it's the what you're doing for the community as well. If they're like-minded, you get a proper return, a proper ROI. They're already silent. Hey, what are we doing next? Like, I just made X. I want to put it back into here. But we need more folks that look like us, not just consuming, but building,
Come on,
developing,
man.
growing, coming up with ideas. And so, you got a friend in me. You got a friend in Carlos. So it's all love. It's all love. So the blessings are omnipresent, and I'm just grateful, my dear brother.
I appreciate you. I thank you for all that you're doing. I thank God for your father and
Amen.
for imparting the wisdom, the knowledge, and a lot of understanding into you because you're utilizing it now, you and the other nine. So I appreciate you for the steps you're making and for the partners who partnered with you to create this book that because it's important for youth.
Correct.
It's important for us to be able to understand why your father did the things he
Well
did.
said.
And
Well
if
said.
that wasn't created for us to understand, we wouldn't even know. So thank you for memorializing and keeping him alive because this keeps him alive.
No
So
question about it. Thank you,
with
and this does too, your platform. So thank you for allowing me to come on your platform, my dear brother. Keep up the good work, and we're connected now, so I'm always a call away, brother.
my
Peace to
name is
you, family. Love and blessings.
my name is Carlos Walker. This is Art and Hustle Black Authors Matter, and this is Mr. Dr. Christian Gregory. Peace and
Love it.
blessings.
Peace and blessings.